Royal Guard forces car door open, after
Wait,
Charlotte's
stop.
face
Where are you
pressed
going?
against tinted window. The engine was smooth, the driver calm, and the schedule perfectly planned. But inside the car, Charlotte sat very still in the back seat. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers gently locked together as if she was holding herself in place. She had not spoken since the car left the gates. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. Her face moved closer to the tinted window until her cheek almost touched the glass. The outside world appeared blurred and distant, like a scene she could see but not reach. People stood behind barriers, waiting, watching, unaware that anything was wrong. To them, this was just another routine arrival. Another day, another car, another moment to record and forget. But Charlotte did not pull back from the window. Her breath left a faint fog on the glass. She did not wave. She did not smile. Her eyes followed nothing in particular, fixed somewhere far beyond the crowd. There was no panic in her expression, no sudden movement. Instead, there was something quieter, something heavier. One of the royal guards standing nearby noticed it. He had been trained to scan crowds, spot fast movement, read hands, and measure distance. But this time, his attention was drawn inward to the car itself. He saw Charlotte's face pressed close to the tinted window. He saw how long she stayed there. He saw how her eyes did not react to the people outside. Most people would have looked away after a second. She did not. The guard adjusted his stance, his hand resting lightly near his belt, not in alarm but in readiness. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion but in focus. Something about the stillness felt wrong. Silence, he knew, could hide more than noise ever could. Inside the car, Charlotte felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. The day had started early as they always did. The same instructions, the same careful movements, the same reminders about posture, timing, and appearances. She had followed them all. She always did. But today something inside her felt smaller. The car slowed further. Charlotte could feel it, the gentle shift in motion. Her heart began to beat faster, not from fear of what was coming, but from the pressure of holding everything in. She wanted air. She wanted space. She wanted the moment to pause just for a second. Her cheek touched the glass now. It was cool, solid, unchanging. Outside, the royal guard took one step closer to the vehicle. His eyes moved from Charlotte to the driver. The driver sat straight, hands firm on the wheel, gaze forward, too fixed. The guard raised his hand slightly, signaling to another guard beside him. They had not spoken, but years of working together meant words were not always needed. The second guard followed the first one's line of sight and saw it too. Charlotte's face, the window, the stillness. Inside, Charlotte's thoughts moved slowly, like she was walking through water. She was not thinking of danger. She was thinking of quiet, of how long it had been since she had felt truly heard. She did not know why she leaned forward. She only knew that she needed someone to see her, even if she could not say anything out loud. Her breathing became shallow. She noticed it but could not fix it. The space felt tighter, the air heavier. The lead royal guard stepped closer and tapped lightly on the window. It was a standard check, gentle but firm. The sound echoed softly against the glass. Charlotte blinked but did not move away. The driver turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the guard without fully facing him. "Everything is fine," he said calmly, his voice smooth and practiced. The guard did not step back. He looked again at Charlotte. Her eyes met his for a brief moment through the dark glass. It was not a look of fear. It was not a look of panic. It was something else entirely, a quiet request, unspoken but clear. The guard felt his chest tighten slightly. Training told him to trust patterns. Experience told him to trust instinct, and his instinct was loud. He tapped the window again, this time closer to where Charlotte sat. The sound seemed sharper now. Charlotte's fingers tightened in her lap. She swallowed slowly. The crowd outside continued to murmur, unaware of the shift happening just feet away. Cameras clicked. Voices blended together. The world moved forward, but inside the car, time felt suspended. The guard spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "Please lower the window." The driver hesitated, just a second too long. Charlotte closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. She did not pull back. She did not sit upright. She stayed exactly where she was, her face near the glass, as if stepping away would cost her something she could not afford to lose. The guard noticed the hesitation, not panic, not confusion, control. He straightened slightly, his presence suddenly more authoritative. His voice remained calm, but the tone shifted. "Open the window." The driver finally reached for the control, lowering the glass just a little. Fresh air slipped inside. Charlotte inhaled sharply, as if she had been waiting for that breath all day. The guard saw it. That was enough. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Is she okay?" The driver replied quickly. "She's just tired, long schedule." Charlotte did not nod. She did not speak. She did not confirm. Her silence spoke louder than words ever could. The guard felt a familiar weight settle in his chest, the responsibility of choice. Moments like this were rare, but they were the ones that mattered most. He knew the rules. He also knew why they existed. To protect. Protection, he reminded himself, was not just about standing between danger and a person. Sometimes it was about stepping in when something felt wrong, even if no one else could see it yet. Charlotte's eyes drifted back to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, faint and distant. She wondered if anyone truly noticed when she felt like this. She wondered if this moment would pass like all the others, quietly and unchanged. Outside, the royal guard took a breath. He raised his hand slightly, signaling again to the others. This time the signal was clear. Something was about to change. The car remained still. The crowd waited. The air felt tense, even if no one could explain why. Charlotte stayed where she was, her face close to the glass, holding onto the quiet hope that someone, somewhere, would finally act. Not because they were told to, but because they cared enough to notice. And for the first time that day, she was not invisible. The royal guard did not rush. He knew that sudden movement could change everything. Instead, he stood firm beside the car, his posture calm but unyielding. His eyes stayed on Charlotte, not to pressure her, but to let her know she was seen. The small gap in the window let in more air, and with it came a slight shift in the moment. Charlotte's shoulders rose and fell slowly. She focused on breathing, one breath at a time. The cool air touched her face, and for the first time in a while, the tight feeling in her chest eased just a little. She still did not speak. Words felt too heavy, too complicated. Silence felt safer. The driver glanced at the guard again. His jaw tightened. He was used to following plans, not questions. Schedules mattered, timing mattered, delays were problems. He cleared his throat and said again, "She's fine. We need to move." The guard did not answer right away. He shifted his weight slightly and looked at the driver more directly now. "We'll move when I'm sure," he replied, his voice steady and respectful. There was no anger in it, only certainty. Another guard stepped closer, standing just behind the first. Together, they formed a quiet barrier between the car and the crowd. Their presence was not threatening, but it was clear. This moment required attention. Charlotte noticed the change outside. She could sense it even without turning her head. The world beyond the glass felt different now, slower, more focused. She felt a strange mix of relief and worry. Relief that someone had noticed. Worry about what would happen next. Her fingers loosened slightly in her lap. She pressed her thumb against her palm, a small grounding habit she had learned over time. The car felt less like a moving box and more like a pause. The lead guard leaned slightly toward the open window, keeping his movements slow and respectful. "Charlotte," he said softly, using her name carefully, "are you comfortable right now?" The question was simple, gentle. It did not demand a long answer. Charlotte's lips parted, then closed again. She swallowed. The truth felt close, but bringing it out felt hard. She nodded once, then shook her head. The mixed response surprised even her. The guard understood. He did not push. He nodded in return, acknowledging the answer she could give. Behind them, the crowd continued to wait. Most people still did not realize what was happening. A few sensed the delay and leaned forward, curious. Cameras lifted slightly, then lowered again when nothing dramatic happened. From the outside, it still looked calm. Inside the car, the driver checked the time. His fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. He leaned forward and spoke in a low voice, meant only for the guard. "We really should go." The guard did not step back. "We will," he said, "but not yet." He glanced at Charlotte again. Her face was no longer pressed to the glass, but she had not leaned back either. She sat somewhere in between, as if unsure which direction felt right. The guard made a decision. He straightened and spoke clearly so the other guards could hear. "I need a brief check." It was a standard phrase, but the meaning was clear. Procedure allowed it. Training supported it. His instinct demanded it. The driver exhaled sharply through his nose. "That won't be necessary." The guard met his eyes. "It is." The tension between them was quiet but firm. No raised voices, no sudden gestures. Just two people standing on opposite sides of responsibility. Charlotte felt the shift again. This time it was stronger. Something important was happening because of her. That thought made her uneasy, but it also made her feel less alone. The guard leaned closer to the window once more. "Charlotte," he said, even more gently now, "would you like to step out for a moment?" The words hung in the air. Charlotte's heart beat faster. Stepping out meant attention. It meant questions. It meant breaking the flow she was used to following. But staying inside felt heavier by the second. She took a breath, then another. Slowly, she nodded. It was a small movement, but it carried weight. The guard saw it immediately. He turned to the driver. "Please open the door." The driver hesitated. His eyes flicked to Charlotte, then back to the guard. "She said she's fine." She nodded to step out, the guard replied calmly. "That's enough." For a moment, no one moved. The car idled quietly. The crowd murmured. Time stretched. Then the driver reached for the handle and unlocked the door. The soft click sounded louder than it should have. The guard opened the door slowly, giving Charlotte space. He did not reach for her. He did not crowd her. He simply held the door open and stepped back half a pace. Charlotte looked at the open space. Light filled the car, brighter than before. The air felt cooler, fresher. She placed one foot on the ground, then the other, moving carefully as if testing whether the ground would hold. When she stood, the guard immediately offered a coat, holding it open without touching her. She slipped her arms into it on her own. The simple act made her feel steadier. The crowd noticed now. A ripple of attention moved through them. Whispers spread. Cameras lifted. But the guards adjusted their positions smoothly, creating a respectful space around her. Charlotte stood still, taking in the open air. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. She did not look at the crowd. She focused on the ground beneath her feet, solid and real. The guard spoke quietly so only she could hear. "Take your time." She nodded again, grateful for the permission. Behind them, the driver stepped out of the car as well, his expression tight. "This is unnecessary," he said, keeping his voice low. The guard turned to him. "Right now, what's necessary is making sure she's okay." Charlotte heard that. The words settled into her like warmth. Someone had chosen her well-being over routine. That mattered more than she could express. She took another deep breath. The tightness in her chest eased further. Her thoughts slowed, no longer rushing. The guard glanced at her face, watching for signs. Her eyes were clearer now, her posture less tense. He felt a quiet sense of confirmation. The choice had been right. "Would you like to sit for a moment?" he asked. Charlotte nodded and pointed slightly toward a nearby barrier where a bench had been placed for staff. The guard guided her there, walking beside her but not touching, matching her pace. As she sat, the noise around them seemed to fade. The moment felt contained, protected. The guard signaled to another team member, who nodded and stepped in to manage the surroundings. Everything moved smoothly, without drama. Charlotte rested her hands on her knees and looked up at the guard. For the first time she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you," she said. The guard inclined his head. "You're welcome." It was a simple exchange, but it carried meaning. Trust had been built in a moment of quiet choice. As Charlotte sat there, breathing freely, she realized something important. She had not been weak. She had been human, and someone had recognized that without needing her to explain. Nearby, the car remained where it was, forgotten for the moment. Schedules could wait, appearances could pause. What mattered now was that Charlotte was no longer alone with her silence, and that made all the difference. Charlotte sat quietly on the bench, her hands resting on her knees, the coat wrapped around her shoulders like a shield. The noise of the crowd faded into a distant hum. She could still hear voices, but they no longer pressed in on her. The open space around her felt unfamiliar, yet comforting. For the first time that day, she felt grounded. The royal guard stood a short distance away, close enough to notice any change, but far enough to give her space. He watched her carefully, not with suspicion, but with concern. He had seen many situations in his years of service, but moments like this were different. They required patience, not force. Charlotte took a slow breath and looked around. The sky above her was pale and clear. She noticed small details she had not seen before, the sound of footsteps, the gentle movement of flags, the way light reflected off polished surfaces. These ordinary things felt important now, reminders that the world was still steady. Another guard approached quietly and spoke in a low voice to the lead guard. They exchanged a few brief words, nothing dramatic, just coordination. Everything was being handled smoothly. There was no rush, no pressure. Charlotte noticed that no one was staring directly at her. The guards had positioned themselves in a way that blocked most views, giving her privacy even in a public place. She appreciated that more than she could say. After a few moments, the lead guard stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "How are you feeling now?" he asked gently. Charlotte considered the question. She searched for the right words. "Better," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake. "I think I just needed a moment," the guard nodded. "That makes sense." There was no judgment in his tone, no need for explanation. The simple acceptance eased something inside her. She looked down at her hands. They were no longer clenched. She rubbed her thumb against her finger, feeling the texture of the fabric beneath her. The small motion helped her stay present. The driver stood nearby, speaking softly with another member of the team. He glanced toward Charlotte, then away again. His posture was less rigid now, the tension slowly leaving his shoulders. Even he seemed to understand that this pause had been necessary. Charlotte leaned back slightly on the bench. The weight on her chest had lifted enough for her to take a deeper breath. She closed her eyes for a second, letting the cool air fill her lungs. When she opened them, the world felt clearer. The lead guard spoke again, his voice calm. "There's no rush. When you're ready, we can continue, or we can wait longer. It's your choice." The word surprised her. Choice was not something she often heard in moments like this. She looked up at him, meeting his eyes. He meant it. "Thank you," she said again, more firmly this time. A few steps away, one of the guards quietly redirected the crowd, explaining that there would be a brief delay. Most people accepted it without complaint. Life went on. The situation remained peaceful. Charlotte watched as the car sat nearby, its door still open. It no longer felt like a barrier. It was just a car again. The fear she had felt inside it seemed distant now, like a memory that had already begun to fade. She stood slowly, testing her balance. The guard noticed immediately and stepped closer, ready to help if needed, but he did not touch her. She remained steady. "I think I'm okay to continue," she said after a moment. The guard nodded. "All right, we'll take it slow." They walked together toward the car. The guards formed a gentle path, not tight, not rushed. Charlotte felt supported without feeling controlled. It was a balance she had rarely experienced. As she approached the open door, she paused. The memory of sitting inside, pressed against the window, returned briefly. She hesitated, then looked at the guard. He noticed. "Would you like the window lowered?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, please." The guard signaled to the driver, who lowered the window fully. Sunlight poured into the back seat, changing the space completely. It felt open now, breathable. Charlotte smiled faintly. It was the first smile of the day. She stepped into the car and sat down, adjusting the coat around her. This time she leaned back comfortably, her gaze forward. The guard closed the door gently, making sure the window remained down. Before stepping away, he leaned slightly toward her and spoke quietly. "If you need anything, just let us know." She met his eyes through the open window. "I will." The door closed with a soft sound, not final, not heavy, just a door. The guards resumed their positions and the driver started the engine. The car began to move again, slowly and smoothly. The schedule resumed, but something had changed. Inside the car, Charlotte watched the guards fade into the distance. She felt calmer than she had in days. The moment by the window felt like a turning point, not because something dramatic had happened, but because someone had listened without needing words. As the car moved forward, she rested her head against the seat and took another deep breath. The road ahead was still long, but it no longer felt overwhelming. Outside, the lead guard watched the car leave. He stood still for a moment, reflecting. He knew that some would question his decision. Others might never know what had happened at all. But he also knew that he had done the right thing. He had followed training, yes, but more importantly, he had followed awareness. He turned back to his post, ready for whatever came next. The day continued as days always do. But for Charlotte and for him, this moment would remain. A reminder that sometimes the most important actions happen quietly, in the space between routine and care. And as the car disappeared down the road, Charlotte looked out at the open sky through the lowered window, feeling the air move freely around her. For the first time in a long while, she felt present in her own journey, not just carried along by it. The silence inside the car was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. The car moved away from the crowd and into a quieter stretch of road. Trees lined both sides, their leaves moving gently in the light wind. The noise from earlier faded until there was only the soft sound of the engine and the tires on the road. Charlotte sat back in her seat, the window still lowered just enough to let fresh air flow inside. She watched the world pass by slowly. Buildings gave way to open space. The tight feeling she had carried for days, maybe longer, continued to loosen. It did not disappear all at once, but it no longer felt like it was pressing on her from every side. The driver glanced in the mirror. His expression was calmer now, less rigid. "We'll be arriving shortly," he said, keeping his voice neutral. Charlotte nodded. She did not feel the need to speak more than that. The quiet inside the car felt safe now, not heavy. She rested her hands in her lap and focused on the rhythm of the movement, letting it steady her thoughts. When the car finally stopped, it was not in front of a crowd or cameras. It was a quieter entrance, one used for private arrivals. A guard stepped forward and opened the door, giving Charlotte a small nod. She stepped out slowly, her movements confident but unhurried. Inside the building, the air was cool and still. The sounds were softer here, footsteps on polished floors, distant voices, the gentle closing of doors. Charlotte felt her shoulders relax even more as she walked down the corridor. She was guided to a small, comfortable room with simple furniture and warm lighting. There were no decorations meant to impress, just a calm space meant for rest. She sat down on a chair near the window and looked outside. The view showed a garden, quiet and green. After a few minutes, the lead royal guard from earlier appeared at the doorway. He did not enter right away. He knocked lightly, waiting. "Come in," Charlotte said. He stepped inside and stood near the door. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. "Make sure you're doing all right." Charlotte took a moment before answering. She looked at the garden again, then back at him. "I am," she said honestly. "Thank you for asking and for earlier," he nodded. "Of course." There was a pause, comfortable and unforced. Then Charlotte spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "I didn't realize how much I was holding in until I couldn't anymore." The guard listened carefully. He did not interrupt. "I'm used to keeping things steady," she continued. "Keeping moving, not slowing down. But today it felt like everything caught up at once." "That can happen," he said quietly, "even to the strongest people." Charlotte smiled faintly at that. "Sometimes I forget that being strong doesn't mean ignoring what you feel." He nodded again. "Exactly." They sat in silence for a moment. The guard then spoke, choosing his words with care. "What happened today will be documented, but only as a routine check. Nothing more. Your privacy will be respected." Charlotte felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, that means a lot." When he left the room, she felt lighter. Not because everything was solved, but because she knew she had been treated with care and respect. Later that day, Charlotte met with a small group of trusted staff. The meeting was quiet and focused, not formal or demanding. They spoke about schedules, about rest, about making room for moments to pause. No one pushed. No one rushed her. Charlotte found herself speaking more openly than she expected. She talked about pressure, about expectations, about how easy it was to lose herself in routine. The others listened, truly listened, and that made all the difference. As the day went on, small changes were made. Nothing dramatic, just thoughtful adjustments. A longer break here, a quieter arrival there. Simple things that added up to something meaningful. Outside, word of the earlier delay had spread, but only in fragments. There were no wild stories, no harsh judgments. Most people simply moved on. The world continued as it always does. For the royal guard, the incident stayed with him. Later that evening, he stood at his post, reflecting. He thought about how close the moment had been to passing unnoticed. How easy it would have been to accept the first explanation and step aside. He knew he would remember that feeling, the instinct that told him to pause, to look closer. It reminded him why he chose this role in the first place. Protection was not only about physical safety. It was about awareness, presence, and humanity. Charlotte spent the evening quietly. She took a short walk in the garden, feeling the ground beneath her feet, the cool air on her skin. She breathed deeply and let her thoughts settle. As the sun lowered, painting the sky in soft colors, she realized something important. She had not failed by needing help. She had taken a step toward caring for herself. She returned inside and sat by the window once more, but this time she did not press her face against the glass. She simply watched, calm and present. The events of the day replayed in her mind, not as something frightening, but as something meaningful. A reminder that even in a life shaped by duty and expectation, there was room for compassion, both from others and from herself. As night settled in, Charlotte felt tired, but it was a gentle tiredness, not the heavy kind. She knew sleep would come easily. Somewhere else in the building, the royal guard finished his shift. As he walked away, he felt a quiet sense of purpose. He knew that what he had done might never be publicly acknowledged, but that did not matter. What mattered was that someone had been seen, heard, and protected when it counted. And for Charlotte, that single moment by the tinted window had become the start of something new, not a dramatic change, but a steady one. A reminder that silence does not have to be endured alone, and that sometimes, being noticed is the first step toward healing. Charlotte woke the next morning feeling a sense of calm she had not felt in a long time. The previous day's events, the pause in routine, and the quiet attention she had received lingered in her mind like a gentle echo. She stretched, feeling the tension in her shoulders slowly ease, and looked out the window at the soft morning light spilling across the garden below. For the first time in days, she felt present in her own life. The building was quiet. Staff moved carefully, aware that she needed space but ready to assist if necessary. Charlotte dressed slowly, deliberately, taking each movement as a reminder that she could control her own pace. She did not rush. She had learned in the last 24 hours that patience was not weakness, it was strength. Downstairs, the royal guard who had intervened yesterday was already on duty. He noticed Charlotte's approach and offered a respectful nod. She returned it, feeling a sense of trust she had never felt before with anyone in uniform. There were no words needed to acknowledge the bond formed through quiet understanding and careful attention. As she walked through the corridors, she reflected on the moments that had led to this day. The pressure, the expectations, the silent isolation, all of it had built up over time, and yet yesterday she had been seen. That small recognition, that act of noticing her when no one else had made a profound difference. She entered a room prepared for her schedule, but today it felt different. Today she did not feel trapped by routine. She was aware of her surroundings, of her choices, and of the people who supported her. It was not about control or appearances anymore. It was about care and understanding. A member of the staff approached, holding a folder of documents. "Good morning, Charlotte. We've made some adjustments to your schedule based on yesterday," they said softly. "Nothing drastic, just more time for breaks and moments to rest." Charlotte smiled faintly. "Thank you, that helps a lot." The staff member nodded and left, leaving Charlotte to settle into a quiet corner by the window. She watched the sunlight move across the garden, noticing small details she had never taken the time to see before. Birds hopping between branches, dew glistening on the leaves, and the gentle sway of flowers in the breeze. Ordinary things, but extraordinary because she was finally present to notice them. Later, the lead royal guard returned to check on her. He did not come in abruptly or demand attention. He entered the room with the same quiet authority he had shown the day before, standing near the doorway but giving Charlotte the space she needed. "How are you feeling this morning?" he asked. "Calm," she replied honestly. "I feel lighter. Yesterday helped more than I realized at the time." He nodded, understanding. "I'm glad. Remember, if you ever feel overwhelmed again, don't hesitate to speak up. Asking for help is not weakness, it's wisdom." Charlotte reflected on those words. They were simple, yet they carried the weight of truth. She had spent so long holding everything inside, afraid that needing help would show weakness. Yesterday had proven otherwise. Support could be gentle, quiet, and effective, and she had experienced it firsthand. The rest of the morning passed in a steady rhythm. Charlotte moved through her tasks with awareness and care, noticing how small breaks made a difference. She felt more in control of her thoughts and her emotions, able to respond instead of merely react. At lunch, she was joined by a few trusted colleagues. Conversation flowed naturally, light but meaningful. Laughter returned in small doses, a sound she had not realized she had missed. The experience of yesterday had shifted something inside her. She no longer felt as if she were moving through life under a microscope. Instead, she felt acknowledged and respected. After lunch, she returned to her room for a quiet moment by the window. The garden outside looked more alive in the afternoon sun. She breathed deeply, letting the warmth fill her. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the moment in the car, the pressure, the fear, the quiet distress. She realized that it had been the royal guard's intervention that had turned the day around. A simple act of noticing, of stepping forward when others might have ignored the signs, had made all the difference. Charlotte understood something important now. Protection was not only about rules or schedules. It was about human awareness, about seeing what others might overlook, about acting with care. That realization brought a profound sense of gratitude. Later, the lead guard stopped by once more. He brought a small cup of tea, setting it gently on a table near her. "For you," he said. "No interruptions, no expectations, just a quiet moment." Charlotte accepted it, her fingers brushing the warm ceramic. She smiled. "Thank you, this is perfect." They shared a quiet moment, sitting in the room without speaking. The comfort was in the presence, in the knowledge that someone cared enough to provide space without imposing. It was an understanding that transcended words. As the day progressed, Charlotte reflected on her journey. The events surrounding the car, the moment pressed against the window, and the intervention by the guard were more than an incident. They were a turning point. She had been reminded of the importance of being seen, of being acknowledged, and of allowing others to help when needed. Even as the evening approached, Charlotte felt the calm she had discovered earlier continue to grow. She walked through the garden once more, the cool evening air brushing her face. The world around her was ordinary, yet for her, it had become extraordinary because she could finally experience it fully. The royal guard finished his shift and checked in one last time. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Yes," Charlotte replied with a calm certainty. "Better than all right, thank you for everything." He nodded, offering a small smile before turning away. Charlotte watched him go, feeling gratitude but also a sense of closure. The moment had passed, but its impact would remain. As the building quieted for the night, Charlotte settled near the window once more. She thought about the lessons she had learned, the value of awareness, the power of gentle action, and the strength that comes from acknowledging one's own needs. She felt ready for whatever came next, not because the world had changed, but because she had. She had been seen, heard, and supported. That made all the difference. And for the first time in a long time, Charlotte felt truly at peace, knowing that even in the midst of pressure and expectation, there was room for care, compassion, and quiet moments that mattered more than any schedule or rule. The night sky stretched above her, calm and untroubled. Charlotte watched it for a long while, breathing in the cool air and letting herself simply exist, present and alive. The events of the day had reminded her that small acts of attention and kindness could create profound change. And with that understanding, Charlotte closed her eyes, feeling secure in the knowledge that she had been seen, valued, and respected. It was a lesson she would carry forward, not as a fleeting moment, but as a lasting reminder that even in the busiest and most controlled lives, humanity and care could make all the difference. The world would continue to move around her, schedules would resume, and expectations would return. But Charlotte knew something had shifted. She had learned the quiet power of being noticed, of trusting those who genuinely cared, and of honoring her own needs without fear. In the stillness of that evening, Charlotte smiled softly. The memory of the tinted window, the pause, and the care she had received was no longer a moment of fear. It was a moment of awakening, and in that awakening she discovered a peace that she would carry with her forever.